Thank you. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the organizer for extending the invitation so I can join. It's been very interesting for me. I'll have to start by disappointing you. I'm neither a loss adjuster, nor a risk manager, nor working with insurance companies or for an insurance company. So I will try to give you a perspective on something slightly different. I would like to a quick agenda of what I want to talk about. I'll talk about a little bit about my company, who actually does the dirty work on damages. I would assume that most of you have not heard about the company I work for. Some of you probably have. But we are working on half a dozen damages, large damages globally at any time, basically. And then I want to give you a bit of input on how important a quick decision is to prevent further damages and to reduce business interruption. And I also have two little examples, or two big examples, of how damages can go one or the other way and the lessons learned from that. I'm responsible for Europe and Asia, for the operation in Europe and Asia, and that's covering 25 countries with about 250 locations. Just a little bit about us, largest property damage restoration company in the world. As you can see, we've developed quite nicely. We cover most global insured markets and can react basically anywhere in the world. In the last 24 months, we've done damages from basically Japan, Taiwan, over to several damages in Asia, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, and Kuwait, and all across Europe. What is a service provider? You might think when there's a damage, once you have sorted out all the loss adjusting and all the money it has to be paid out, then you can go with building companies, repair companies to do the work. But not everybody knows there are specialized companies who can provide the special service and the expertise which is needed in those situations. What service providers now do is they have special teams who can react to different kind of damages and who have the expertise basically in different parts and different manufacturing environments, which are usually the most challenging situations. Those experts, what we look at are specialized with different areas or have experience with different damages in different environments. And we also have the logistics and the equipment which is needed to react very quickly. And speed, as you know, is usually of the essence. So we're many times faced with the situation that we're there before anybody else. So usually when the fire brigades are gone and when the site has been cleared, the damage site has been cleared so it can be entered, we can be on site. And sometimes we're there before the loss adjusters or anybody else. To give you an impression on different areas which we try to service where we have expertise. Those are damages on ships, maritime. We work with wind turbines, food, pharmaceuticals, vehicle manufacturing, power plants in different fields. And when a damage occurs and we're called, we would usually find an expert who has dealt with similar damages in the past. Because one of the important things is to understand the scope of the damage and how the affected property functions, basically. There's common tools and common processes which are very much oriented towards what most of you experience on the damage. It was said today there's a set process for how to handle a damage, how to do the loss adjusting, and the steps which are in tune. And I think that's one of the things which makes a difference. When you understand the process which is happening on your end, which is happening on the insurance side, which is happening with all the parties involved, and being able to follow that, and plus to ensure that the policyholder, the affected party, is a service in a good way. So the damages which we experience usually are fire damages, water damages, storm damages, floods, but there's also earthquakes and other things which can happen, which are not as dramatic. Hurricane Houston was mentioned today. I think this is the first time a hurricane in Houston was mentioned, and Irma as well. Today, this is one of the first times where we are coming to our limits. As far as I know, last week, just out of Houston, we had more than 200 million worth of orders coming out of that, and Irma is still being assessed. So this is on a scale which is really significant. Usually, in a typical year, that kind of business wouldn't make more than 5% of our overall business. But looking at what makes it, what do we try to do? We try to get the business affected back to life or back live as quickly as possible. So there are some things which are quite important to do, and I'll come back to that in a little bit later. It's the immediate measures. A worsening of the damage can significantly be reduced if quick steps are taken in the initial phase, very quickly. And then the next step is the actual damage restoration. The prevention of further damage is part of the whole process, and the restoration of the damage to pre-loss condition. And there's different ways to go about that, and there's different decisions to be made at each of the steps. One thing I would like to point out: the quicker the decision is, especially in manufacturing environments, is if the reaction is quick, many things can be done, or a few things can be done really to prevent the damage or from deteriorating further. So when the reaction is quick, a lot of the affected, especially after fires or soot and other contamination is involved. A lot of it can be, further damage can be prevented by simply cleaning, taking machines apart, cleaning them into individual parts and putting them back together. The longer we wait, or you wait, to start the works, the higher the corrosion is on the affected equipment. And the higher the corrosion is, the less can be salvaged, basically. And after a certain point, usually the damage gets unproportionately large, and then the potential for restoring part of the damage really decreases, and we come to a total loss. So, and we won't be able to help you with a total loss. Then there you can use other service providers. One thing I would like to point out is at the beginning of the damage, when you have the least information, most of the decisions have to be made. The important decision to really prevent further loss. So as we progress in the damage, and as all the parties involved gain more knowledge of what has to be done and what is required, most of the decisions have been taken or initiated. So if they haven't been taken, the damage might take a very different course of action. And so reducing business interruption is one of our main goals. We like to work with all parties. Reducing business interruption is obviously not only in the interest of the insurance company or a loss adjuster, it's also in many cases the interest of the affected facility. The longer it takes to get the business running, loss of customers, loss of business, all kinds of things. And the big thing is, from our perspective, is usually not the amount of the payout. The big problem is that most of the equipment is specifically made for the environment in which it is being used. And to reorder that equipment usually takes months, if not years, to get manufactured and delivered and installed. So it is crucial to save as much as possible and only replace what really needs to be replaced. And for that, it is important to work with the manufacturers. It is important to work with the affected business, with the affected operation, and to minimize basically the impact. And just to give you an indication on what kind of cost is involving a company like us or any other service provider in our field, usually we think we will save anywhere between 70 and 90% of the replacement cost if we're involved very quickly. I have two examples of two losses which we were involved in, and two different examples with different consequences, just to illustrate what can happen and then how it can go. One is a loss in Poland, a German supplier to a German manufacturer, where the time lag of decision making has significantly impacted the overall cost of the claim. And also another damage where a quick response has really saved a lot of money and headaches for all parties involved. To start with the first damage, there was a supplier in Poland who suffered a major fire. A global German corporate in Poland. It was a production of, the stop of production from the key supplier had a roughly business interruption cost of just above €1 million per day. The German company called basically on the same day. We sent somebody out in Poland to look at the damage, and first decisions have been made. We did first measures, what can be done to stop the damage. So this happened basically within the first day. Some preservation work was done. So what you have in the initial phase, what you can do is protect equipment which has been affected, either by applying a protective coating, or you can apply dry air to stop corrosion. So this, depending on the local situation, has been done as far as it could be done. However, due to the there was also a quote provided, and we ordered cranes and the heavy equipment which was needed to basically start the work immediately. Everything was reserved. However, the Polish local insurer decided, well, this could be potentially done in a cheaper way, so they took a few days to decide, get different quotes and compare quotes, and due to delay, we had to lay off the equipment. We released the equipment which was reserved, and the orders were not caused. And I think it's important to understand, when you have a damage like that, there is specialized equipment needed. And you don't get that equipment just overnight when you need it. So there is a certain amount of preparation necessary. As you can see, more than a week on, the damage has, the work has still not been changed. And at some point, we got the order to actually do the work and start the work. But to start the work, we needed to ensure the safety of the structure which was affected. Some beams had to be removed from the site, so the workers could go in and start actually working on the protection of the equipment. Heavy beams and heavy equipment was needed to move that, and to remove the loose parts and ensure that the work can initiate. So once we got the approval, basically, we started. We removed what could be removed, or what needed to be removed, and in parallel, we started salvaging the equipment inside the tools which were affected. Some heavy machines. We started disassembling them, and we moved them to a production facility, one of our sister companies in Germany, where we had ultrasonic baths, and all the parts, mechanical parts which could be salvaged, cleaned, went through the process of cleaning. And just 5 days later, the first parts were delivered back to the company, to the facility, and were reassembled in order to start the production again. To give you an example, overall it was more than 50 machines which have been dismantled, reassembled, and put in a relatively short time. The total cost for what we generated in Poland was roughly 1.5 million, and there was another 750,000, which was the cost for basically cleaning and disassembling the machines in Germany. The delays by the initial not making the decision, you can basically calculate yourself. 6 days, 6 million. Finding a supplier who can probably do it for 150, 200,000 euros cheaper, I'm not sure if it paid off. And this is what we're trying to point out. It's very important to react very quickly and to ensure that damages don't deteriorate in the decision-making process. And for that reason, it's important to work both with the loss adjusters, with the insurance company, sometimes even the reinsurer, local, international, there's different parties involved, and especially also work with the with the affected business locally and understand what is needed to be done first and what second, what third, to ensure that production and business can restart as quickly as possible. So that's one example which didn't go so well. The alternative is a fire damage also in a business, well, this one is in Germany. It's an international market leader for machinery in the food industry. Cause of fire was a short circuit in the forklift. So forklifts do not only crash the racks, they have other issues as well. It wasn't such a big damage, it wasn't a big fire, so it wasn't spectacular, but obviously through the smoke and soot and everything which came out, the fire brigades came out and they extinguished the damage. It was a facility of 7,500 square meters. And all the machines were covered either in soot or in powder from the fire extinguishing. We were called in by the broker, as you can see, on Friday around 9 a.m. At 10:30, the first people started initiating work or initiating and assessing the situation. At 1:30, a few hours later, the work started. The direct insurer arrived at 4 p.m. in the afternoon and had a chemist accompanying him to help out with the initial assessment, do the proper testing and everything. And all building and surface machinery and some semi-finished productions needed to be reconditioned. The work was done in 2 shifts with roughly 100 people, and after 9 days, basically, the business interruption was avoided. Total cost for this service was roughly 1 million euros. A few pictures, basically, as I said before, powder extinguishers are cheap, effective. They extinguish the fire, but they can be very expensive in retrospect. One example, I didn't have major damage in Germany in the past year, where a poultry producer was affected by a large fire. Were actually the owner of the plant, which supplies roughly 30% of all the chicken and poultry for the German market, was affected during the Easter holidays. And that's a damage where within days, basically due to the pressure of the owner, we had close to 1,000 people working in 2 shifts to get the production up. And within 2 weeks, the production was started rerunning, and all the suppliers. You have to imagine that there's eggs coming in, there's breeding, there's hatching all over around. So while one factory was affected, there's all kinds of support businesses which are affected as well. And it's also one of the things which we see increasingly affecting business as there's an increase in globalization and dependency on each other. An example, beginning of this year, there was a fire in a Czech production facility, a supplier of automotive parts for the German, not only German, but German and French vehicle industry, car manufacturers. And within 5 days, they had to slow down production and in part stop production because a supplier in the Czech Republic was affected by the fire. We see this all over the place, and so the immediate damage which you see is one part, but depending on what they manufacture and what they do, it might have quite consequential damages on companies in different parts of the world. If you remember, a few years ago there was a big flood in Thailand, close to Bangkok, where most of the world's hard disk production was affected, which caused problems all over the place because there was nobody able to deliver or jump into that. So what I would like to point out, it is very important to pick a service provider, a company which can support you in the process, which can help you initiate the first measures, which is usually not the most expensive thing. At least the first measures can be done quickly and a lot of damage can be avoided. And then it's important to have individual solutions to understand what the customer, the policyholder is all about. What kind of environment is it? Is it a power plant? Is it a production facility? Is it pharma? There's all kinds of requirements, and important to get the right people in to help you, not assessing, but help you thinking about the process and help understanding what the customer really needs in order to get this production back on track. And obviously, the shorter the remediation process is, the restoration process, the smaller the costs are overall. So speed is of the essence, and it really involving all parties and discussing on a regular basis what can be done and what has to be done, and synchronizing all the actions in order to finish the process as quickly as possible. Minimize obviously reliable communication, minimize the robbing losses and everything which comes in association with that. So just as an example, we work pretty much with everybody on the market, and we also maybe just to mention for us it's important to also talk to customers directly. So we do have global agreements with quite a few companies where we provide emergency services and mitigation services in case of loss. One thing we're also engaging is trying to prevent damages by working out some plans, or also reaction plans for us if something happens. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elvir. Thank you.